What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. If you want to stay at daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I put a brand new video. Now, in today's video, it is going to be the 6th iteration of the Baltimore Ravens 7-round mock draft series. Mock Draft Monday, we're back. Guys, if you don't know about Mock Draft Monday, how it works is every single Monday I do a 7-round Baltimore Ravens mock draft. I don't do any trades in the mock draft, especially this far out from the draft, because it's just so difficult to predict. Picks are being traded everywhere, so it's just very tough to analyze how trades would actually be able to go. So I don't do trades in it. Let me know what you guys are doing with your mock drafts. If you have players that you think I should be looking out for in my mock drafts, please let me know. I will look into them. If you dislike a pick that I make, let me know. Give me the reasons. I want to know more, so that when the draft comes, and if we do actually draft some of these players, I know more about them in advance. So, I'm not perfect in my reports and my, analysis of these players. And if you think I made a great selection, let me know as well. But I like to see what you guys are doing with your mock drafts, so comment them down below. I will also make sure to comment my mock draft in the comment section so you guys can check out the full mock. But I'll give my reasonings and stuff like that. But let's get into it. Starting off with pick 14, I went with Andre Booth Jr., cornerback out of Clemson. Now, I was sitting here at pick 14. A lot of the guys that I normally like to go with were gone. Jordan Davis was still available. However, since we did bring in Michael Pierce, I just don't see the Ravens going after a guy like Jordan Davis. And so I was like, okay, do I want to stretch and go with Karlaftis at 14? I don't really think so. I felt like cornerback was a little bit more of a need. However, I could see the argument for going edge rusher, but guys like Jermaine Johnson and stuff like that were all taken. So, I wasn't going to go with Linderbaum because the Ravens had come out and said that, or at least Ravens reporters had come out and said that Makari is likely switching back to center. So, I wasn't trying to go center in the first round. So I went with Andre Booth. He's a man-to-man cornerback. He's got good size. He's someone that I think we can just develop underneath Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, so that one, if either of them somehow get injured, we could have a replacement. But also, just we don't know if Marcus Peters is going to be here next season. Having a guy underneath them, could be very good. And we have a very, very small cornerback core. So I had to make sure that we get, someone that can at least start playing right away. He's only 22 years old. So, I am excited if the Ravens were to draft Andrew Booth. But, at the same time, if we traded back a few spots and took him, I would be much more happy with it. I think he's, more around a pick 17, 18 to 20 guy. Pick 45, I went with Christian Harris, linebacker out of Alabama. Now, Christian Harris, he does fit at the will linebacker spot. That is where Patrick Queen played a good portion of last year. However, the Ravens it seems like they want Patrick Queen to play Mike. That's what they started him at last year. They ended up switching him because he was struggling a little bit, but they brought in Mike McDonald, a former linebacker coach for the Ravens. They bring back Zachary Orr, a former All-Pro linebacker for the Ravens. They are trying to get their linebacking core back to that next level. And I think that starts with Patrick Queen, getting him to be able to play Mike. And Christian Harris could just be a really solid depth piece for the Ravens. He could be behind Malik, and he could be behind Patrick Queen. But I feel like, him coming out of Alabama, the Ravens have had great success drafting out of Alabama. Why? Because Alabama players are ready for the NFL. That's just how it works. They are the most pro-ready college in all of college football. So, he's just someone that could come in, be a depth piece, make some plays, as a run stopping linebacker and things like that. But, overall, Christian Harris, I do like him as a prospect. I think the Ravens are trying to transition Patrick Queen to be the Mike, which is why I drafted Christian Harris to be that will linebacker in the future. Pick 76, I went with edge. I went with Drake Jackson, edge rusher out of USC. I really like Drake Jackson, guys. He is one of my favorite, mid-round edge rushers in this draft. He's a great athlete. He's very quick. He's a little bit lean. However, if he's able to put some muscle, a little bit more muscle on his body, he is going to be a very dominant edge rusher. He is physical. He has great bend. He has quickness to get off the edge. he could be a great steal for the Ravens, in the third round of this draft. I love Drake Jackson. I think he's a really good prospect to look out for. Pick 100. Now we're getting into the repeating picks because we get to just go pick. Pick 100 though. I went with Jalen Wittermeyer. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. The tight end out of Texas A&M. Now, I do believe the Ravens need to sign or draft a tight end. They need 3 tight ends on their roster. Now, they do have some guys that, are undrafted that they could bring in. Tony Poljan is an example of one of them. However, the Ravens should draft one. They have so many picks. Draft a tight end, see if you can fit him in. And Jalen is a guy that can absolutely translate his game to the NFL. He's a good athlete. He's got good ball skills. He's a good pass catcher. Is he a great blocker? No. However, that's why he's the 3rd tight end. Mark Andrews is a really good blocker. Nick Boyle is a fantastic blocker, one of the best in the NFL. So having a guy that can be that pass catcher, we can develop him to be, one of those blocking tight ends like we did Mark Andrews. Remember when Mark Andrews came out of the draft? He couldn't block. He was horrendous. Well, all of a sudden, they got him to start blocking and really appreciate blocking, and he's gotten significantly better. So I do think drafting a tight end is something the Ravens should do. I like Jalen's game. I feel like he could translate to the NFL, be a good pass catcher for Lamar Jackson, be a reliable target. So that's why I went with him, at pick 100. Now, the next pick I went with, pick 110, I went with Alec Lindstrom. He's projected to be a developmental center. He's out of Boston College. He played guard most of his career. He's a bit undersized, which is why he's going to make that transition to center. I just see him as a backup, backup to Patrick McCarry, backup potentially to Tristan Colon-Castillo. But since he did play guard, he could also be a backup at the guard spots for Kevin Zeitler, Ben Cleveland, or Ben Powers, or whoever you want to put at the left guard spot. Having depth on the offensive line is never a bad thing, in my opinion, but he could be good depth for the center spot if the Ravens see a need there. Because, Patrick McCarry, if someone gets injured at the tackle spot, McCarry has shown that he can go outside and play tackle, and we could sub in Lindstrom to play center potentially. So that's why I went with Alec Lindstrom. I pick 110. Let me know what you guys think about that. I've drafted him in a couple of mock drafts just because I think he has good value as a developmental center. Pick 119, I went back to the University of Alabama. I went back to their cornerback group. I took Josh Jobe. I love drafting Josh Jobe in these mock drafts. Josh Jobe, he's gotten to play against some of the best young wide receivers in football. Him coming out of Alabama means that he gets to play against Jamison Williams, Mechie. He gets to play against Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. These are the guys he was practicing against. So he has experience going up against NFL talent. And then on the field, he's gone up against Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and all the, Kadarius Toney, all the other great SEC players that have come into the NFL. So I do like him because he does have that experience. He is coming out of Alabama. The Ravens have had good experience drafting corners out of Alabama, most recently with Anthony Averett, prior to that, Marlon Humphrey. But, overall, Josh Jobe, good size, man-to-man corner. He can be physical. And I think we need depth at the cornerback spot because we have very, very few guys. We need that depth. That's why I'm drafting a lot of cornerbacks. It's because we need it. Now, whether or not you want Josh Jobe or Kobe Bryant or whatever other mid-round cornerback, let me know if you guys have different guys that you really like. There are some guys that I also like, but I just love Josh Jobe's value. Him at 119. Pick 128, I went with Brandon Smith, linebacker out of Penn State. Now, I wouldn't expect him to play a ton of linebacker for the Ravens. I'm seeing him as a special teams player because he is a great athlete. He's coming out of Penn State. Their linebackers, great athletes. Look at the recent players, Odafe Owe, Micah Parsons, Shaka Toney. Brandon Smith is that next guy in that front 7, and he played with them. He's just a great athlete, can run around, make big hits, good ball tracking and stuff like that. He can make those pursuit angles. So I see him as a potential special teams contributor that could get worked under a Zachary or a Mike McDonald and eventually become potentially a player for the Ravens in that front 7. But the biggest thing I see is, hey, we need some special teams players because we've lost some guys. Especially Anthony Levine. So who's going to replace Anthony Levine? Well, we need some guys that have good athleticism that are willing to make those tackles. That's why I went with Brandon Smith at pick 128. Pick 139, I went with Jermaine Lowell. I think that's how you pronounce it. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. Interior, basically a defensive tackle out of Arizona State. Yes, we brought in Michael Pierce. We have Justin Madubuike. I still feel like we need a little bit more depth at the defensive tackle spot because we don't have a ton. We have Derek Wolfe and Broderick Washington as well, but Derek Wolfe can also play on the outside. He doesn't have to play on the inside of the defensive line. So, with a guy like Jermaine Lowell, I think that he can just come in run situations and he can be a run stopper. That's what he was at Arizona State. He led the Pac-12 in run stuffs in 2020. He's just someone that, I see as a good depth piece. When you're drafting in the later rounds, getting someone that can contribute in any way in his first year is what you're looking for, and he can contribute in run situations for the Ravens if they need him to. So that's why I went with him. At pick 139, but pick 141, I went with an offensive tackle. I went with Dare Rosenthal out of Kentucky. I believe it's pronounced Dare. It might be Dare, but I'm assuming it's Dare Rosenthal. We do need tackle depth because, yes, we did bring in Morgan Moses, which I think is a terrific signing still. We have Ronnie Stanley. Makari can switch outside and play, at the tackle spot, but we still need some guys that we can bring in to be backup offensive tackles. And Dare Rosenthal can absolutely do that. Is he going to be a guy competing with Ronnie Stanley to be our starting left tackle? No. But if for some reason we have an injury at the tackle spot, we need as many guys as we can to try and fill that spot. So I had to make sure that I did go tackle. Normally I go tackle a lot earlier in the draft, but I didn't see any good value earlier. So I had to make sure that I got someone. And so I went with Dare Rosenthal. He's got good size, good strength. He's coming out of the SEC, so that does help. But, final pick 196. I believe I've drafted him once before in a mock draft. I went with Tariq Carpenter, safety out of Georgia Tech. He is a physical specimen. He's 6'2". He's a heavy hitter. He's an athletic freak. He is another guy that I could see as a special teams player, but he could also play a little bit in certain packages as really, if you think about what Anthony Levine was, drafted to be when he came out of college, he was brought into the Ravens to be one. He was a linebacker. He wasn't a safety. And he was supposed to, be that nickel linebacker, that sub-package linebacker. And then eventually he switched over to safety, and he still came in a little bit on defense. But Tariq Carpenter could be a guy where, hey, we need to go into nickel. We need to go into dime. Okay, well, we need to take out a guy like a Patrick Queen because we need someone with a little bit more coverage ability. But he still needs to cover a tight end. Well, Tariq Carpenter could do that at 6'2", and he can lay the wood. Overall, I think he could be a really solid draft steal for the Ravens if they went with him. Would he be starting at safety for the Ravens this year? No, he would not. However, could be a special teams player, could make some big plays there. And then also if the Ravens do need to sub in, a bigger bodied safety that can play in the box, Tariq Carpenter could be that guy. But, let me know what you guys are thinking about this mock draft. As always, I like to see what you guys are doing in your mocks. I like to look at the players. I like to watch a little bit of film on all the guys that you guys select. So I do check all of those out. So thank you to all of you who do post things like that. I'll run through all the names again, but you can check the comment section if you forget them and don't want to listen overall. But it's Andre Booth at 14, Christian Harris at 45, Drake Jackson at 76, Jalen Wittermeyer at 100, Alec Lindstrom at 110, Josh Joby at 119, Brandon Smith at 128, Jermaine Lowell at 139, Dare Rosenthal at 141, and Tariq Carpenter at 196. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions about mock drafts. I will see all of you again tomorrow because Joshua and I are recording some podcast tonight. So it should be a lot of fun. See all of you again